Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me this evening. It's a Friday night, and I'm aware a lot of people have better things to do on a Friday night, but this is the best time that I could maybe fit something in between now and we get into the new year, which leads me on to tonight's topic, and that is New Year's resolutions. Now, beg your pardon. Hold on. Where is this sound coming from? There we go. Professional as always. That's me. Anyway, yeah, talking about New Year's resolutions. Now, the thing about a New Year's resolution is every year it's a traditional thing. We come up with an idea, we want to do something, we're going to stop this, we're going to start that. If you're anything like me, by the time you wake up the next morning, the resolution's gone, you're back to where you started. And I think a lot of the time is because we don't really think through some of the things that we want to do. We just maybe have an idea or a notion, which is fair enough, but maybe putting a little bit more thought into it, getting an idea of what we would like to be different, what we would like to improve, and then looking at how we go about that. And importantly, how we stick to it, how we continually encourage and motivate ourselves. So, little known secret. We don't actually need a new year to have a resolution. We can have a resolution anytime, okay? It's just traditional for us to make one on January the 31st. But we can set a resolution at any time. And that resolution could be something maybe we've been holding back on doing, something we would like to do, we would prefer to do, something we think we're going to benefit from, something we think will improve our lot in life. That could be anything. That could be, I want to be healthier. I want to be fitter. I want to lose weight. I want to gain weight. I want to build muscle. I want to improve my social support network. I want to become more assertive. I would like a new partner. I don't want to be on my own anymore. It could be a lot of different things. When you think about what it is you would like, what you would like to improve, what you would like to be better, be honest with yourself as to why, because again, sometimes we just have an aspiration. So why would it be important? Why is it important to maybe be more assertive? How would you benefit from that? Even how would the people around you benefit from that? If it's about being more confident, the same thing. If it's about becoming healthier, if it's been trying to be more successful somehow, try climb that corporate ladder, get a better job or whatever. You'd be honest with yourself as to why you would like to do it. Also pay attention to some of the things that might be holding you back. I think all of us, we get into these habits and we can talk ourselves out of things. Sometimes we have bad habits. We have unhealthy thinking habits. We perhaps catastrophize, we jump to conclusions, we read minds and so on. Sometimes we have these habits, could be like procrastinating or something. We have different things that come up in us. Somebody raises their voice, maybe we back down, or we put other people's needs in front of our own. There's a lot of different things can actually get in our way. So when we get an idea of what it is we would like to improve, what we would like to do, we start to look at some of the things that can hold us back. Now, this is the thing about looking at some bad habits. Again, something like procrastination. Whenever we look at the things that hold us back and we try to find ways to maybe let go of them, change them, adapt them, come through them, manage them a bit better, we're not actually losing anything. Sometimes it feels like we could be losing something. If we're losing something that's holding us back, like, an unhelpful belief or something, we don't actually lose anything. Those other parts of us, those other parts that we have, they, if you will, they start to become a bit stronger. They start to become more galvanized. The thing that's holding us back no longer drags us, so we can move forward a little bit easier. Sometimes in order to break a bad habit, it might mean having to form a new habit. Sometimes that's a lot easier. I'll talk through something like procrastination a little bit later on when it comes to dealing with things like that. So when we start to identify some of the things that hold us back, we start to adapt, we start to change them, we start to address them. As I say, it can be a little bit easier to move forward. So when you're thinking about what it is you would like to change, what it is you'd like to improve, you're being honest with yourself as to why you think that would be the way you would prefer it, the way you would like it. You're also being honest as to why it might be difficult. Why it might be difficult? Because of the things we do ourselves, that own internal critic that we have, those unhelpful beliefs, those bad habits, and so on. You're being honest about everything. It's going to be easier to address once you, if you will, you start to build on your own self-awareness. Acknowledge and accept there might be some things that really are going to be difficult to overcome. Sometimes we might not have the resources. Sometimes it might take a lot of time. Change isn't always the flick of a switch. Sometimes it's going to have to be little small steps. It's going to have to learn one thing to be able to do something else. So you're going to be maybe setting smaller goals. For instance, if you want to learn how to drive a car, you're going to have to, first of all, get your learner's license. You're going to have to start paying for lessons. You're going to have to start taking lessons, which means you're going to have to find the money for the lessons. Do you see what I mean? You start breaking things down into smaller goals. If you look at the thing as a whole, it's probably going to be a little bit overwhelming. And that's when we start to talk ourselves out of it. So you accept that some things are maybe going to be difficult. They might take a little bit of sacrifice. They might also need support from other people. Not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's quite good whenever people can encourage each other. Recognize the impact as well. I will say, look at things in a balanced way. You recognize the impact, the benefits of whatever that change is going to be, but also pay attention to the impact if you don't. Sometimes you're going to be fine as you are. It's not that big a deal because it was only an aspiration. But it could be something that you really could benefit from, something that you really do feel you need to do. And this is the thing, is something I often talk about in therapy. We pay attention because every single thing we do is going to have a consequence. But everything we don't do is going to have a consequence as well. So you pay attention to the impact on both. Which would you prefer? Which consequences would you prefer? Not all consequences have to be bad, by the way. Some can be quite good. Some can be painful. But you pay attention to those consequences. So you recognize the impact of moving towards what it is you want to do, but also if you don't. You also recognize how some of the things, your own behaviors, again, some of your own beliefs, how they impact. For instance, let's stick with assertiveness. If it is trying to be more assertive, we look at our beliefs that maybe we believe other people are more powerful. We believe they're more important. We believe they're only going to talk us down. We believe we don't have the inner resources. We don't have the confidence. Well, again, if we believe that and we stick with that, we're probably going to stay stuck. So in order to become more assertive, perhaps it's about looking at ways to build your confidence. It could be practicing little small steps, little small ways in different situations. And again, you start to build up that confidence. You start to build up your resilience. You start to build up your courage. Okay. Something in my eye. Now, I think it's important as well to learn from past experiences, maybe learn from other people's experiences as well. I think it's important that we learn and build on what works, but we also have to build on what doesn't work, what hasn't worked in the past. When we recognize the things that haven't worked for us, we can rule those out. We can maybe try something different. That might mean having to learn something new. That might mean having to come out of our comfort zone. Again, we're thinking of the long-term goal. We're thinking of the benefits. And then it just maybe comes down to taking action, whatever that is. Now, maybe it's not jumping in feet first. It could be little small tentative steps. If you want to learn a new skill, you want to enroll in a course, take part in a support group, you want to maybe apply for other jobs, you want to apply for a promotion or whatever. Maybe it's about looking to see what's available, looking in your local area. It could be maybe talking to other people who have a bit of experience or have maybe tried something. So they're little small tentative steps. You're giving yourself information. Again, that can help with your decision making, building on and ruling in what does work, but ruling out what doesn't work. Then you look, again, going back to those things that hold us back. You look at the things that hold you back. They could be the bad habits. It could be things like the procrastination. It could be the lack of confidence. You recognize those things, but also recognize the cues that trigger those bad habits. Sometimes it could be something like boredom. It could be hunger, believe it or not. It could be just being fatigued. It could be tired. It could be we have a good idea, but there's always someone there that talks us out of it, tells us why it's going to be bad, why it's not going to work. So again, we feel talked down. We tend to give in. We compromise. Look at the cues that trigger the bad habits. Sometimes it can be something external. Sometimes it can be our own internal critic, the one that tells us, this is not going to work. This is doomed to failure. Why are you even trying? All of those things. And that's the thing about our beliefs. And I talk about some of the things I talk about. Some of the things I talk about on the live streams as our beliefs. Every single one of us have beliefs. But beliefs are either fact or feeling. And what we do is we examine those beliefs. We look for evidence for as well as evidence against. We try to, if you will, we can try to reframe them. For instance, we might believe everything is far too difficult. Well, if we look at that in a more balanced way, we look at the evidence for and against. No, some things are difficult, but not everything. Some things might come naturally to us. Some things might be easier. Some things are easier with a little bit of support, or they might be easier once we learn how to. We can also recognize that difficult is not the same as impossible. Just like not now is not the same as not ever. So we look at some of those things that trigger those bad habits, some of those beliefs, some of those external things. One of the things I think hold us back is procrastination. I think all of us procrastinate on some level. Some of us are chronic procrastinators. But you look at the difference between procrastination and avoidance. When we avoid something, it's because we believe it's not in our best interest. It's going to be painful. It's not going to go well. Whenever we procrastinate, that's different. We procrastinate things that are perhaps in our best interest. But when we procrastinate, it's like we want it, but we want it without the consequences. We want it without the strain. We want it without the hassle. We want it without the fear of failing. We want it without, the ridicule, the scorn, whatever. All of those things that come with it. We want it without the difficulties. And we're not saying no. Just like with avoidance, we were saying, no, I'm not having that. That's not on. With procrastination, we're not saying no. We're just saying, not at the moment, not right now. And some expert procrastinators can find a million things to do other than what they're supposed to do. Now, as I say, we all procrastinate on some level. Not necessarily a bad idea, because we could be thinking through what's the best way to go about this, but we could spend months thinking about it. So something that might help. Again, help with the procrastination, help with some of the unhelpful beliefs. Just a little exercise if you ever want to try. You can try this for anything that you procrastinate on. Just get yourself a page and draw a line down the center of it. And on the left-hand side of the page, you write down all of the problems, all of the difficulties. A name has just popped up here. I've just seen it. It's Dr. Ruth. Hello, Ruth. Thank you for joining me this evening. No difficult questions, please. It's a Friday night. I'm a bit fragile. I'm all on my own. Freud's downstairs, but you know what I mean. I'm pretty much on my own. So not too many difficult questions, please. Where did I get to? Yeah, you draw a line down the page. On the left-hand side of the page, just write down all of the problems, all of the difficulties, all of the issues, all of the reasons why it's going to be a strain, all of the sacrifices, all of the problems, if you will. And then once you've done that, just go ahead and do it. I'm sorry, there's no magic bullet. You just go ahead and you do it, or you make a start. Then, when you've done that, you take that same page, and on the right-hand side of the page, you write down what are the real problems. What were the real issues? What were the real sacrifices? What were the real difficulties? I'm not going to ruin the exercise for you, but you're probably going to find two very different lists, and it's your own handwritten evidence. I say that because a lot of the time what we're doing is we are talking ourselves out of things. Remember, a few months ago, I talked about the irrational beliefs that we have, the 12 irrational beliefs. One of them being everything should be easy. It should be effortless. If it's not easy, it's impossible. It's out of my league. There's no way I can cope with this. And the truth is, every single one of us are a bit more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. So I'd be interested, by the way, the next time I do a live stream, I might ask if anybody found that exercise useful. As I say, it's your own handwritten evidence. Once you maybe try that a couple of times, what you're doing is, if you will, like I said earlier on, to break a bad habit, sometimes it's easier to form a new habit. You might find yourself forming a new habit, which means you might start to do things a little better. You might do things a little better. It's not the right way to phrase that. You might find yourself more willing to try things. The other thing is, when you do start to make progress, even if they are little small steps, when you do start to make progress, it's like the brain kicks in that reward system, that happy drug we create, dopamine. We start to feel a sense of pleasure. We start to reward ourselves. We start to feel good. So whenever we start forming those habits, we start to see progress. We're moving a little bit towards whatever it is we're moving towards. We start to feel good, and then our motivation starts to increase. Thinking about something that Ruth said when I was on her channel. Yeah, Ruth, if you remember, what you said was, you go ahead and you do it, the motivation comes afterwards. Yeah. So yeah, she summed it up better than I did just then. But it's that kind of thing. You feel better when you start to see your progress, and that can build on your motivation. Now, a lot of the time, as I say, we're focusing on the difficulties, the problems, our limits, our lack of resources, lack of time, things like that. Also start to pay attention to your strengths and your qualities. We all have them. We all have different strengths, different qualities. Some people are very creative. Some people are very structured. Some people are very good at thinking on their feet. Some people can be quite driven. We all have different qualities. We've all achieved different things. Start paying attention to those qualities. Start building on your self-awareness. You look at what you're good at. You also look at some of the areas in which you struggle. What you're good at, how can you take that and compensate for the areas in which you struggle? Pardon me. So you're really building on your self-awareness. You're aware of your strengths, you're aware of your qualities, but you're also aware of those areas in which you struggle, things you would like to improve. Sometimes they are things that you can improve. Maybe it's learning a new skill in order to be able to do that. Maybe it's practicing a little more patience. Maybe it's, if it's bringing up distress, anxiety, so it might be doing a little bit of grounding, a little bit of reframing, whatever it happens to be, to try to build or improve some of those areas that you might struggle. Where you have your strengths, where you recognize your strengths, then play to them, use them, utilize them, adapt them, become flexible. I don't mean you become rubber and bendy, but you know what I mean? You become flexible in your approach. You learn to adapt your skills. One of the ways when we talk about resilience isn't just that ability to bounce back. Resilience is that ability to be able to navigate problems, to be able to recognize them, navigate around them or through them. Okay, and we can do that when we build to our strengths. It might mean developing patience. It might mean, again, developing a little more assertiveness. It might be improving our confidence in different areas. Confidence is a good one. As an example, you look at where you're confident in one area. What's different there from an area where you lack confidence? What can you take from there to compensate for this? You learn as well to adapt your approach. When I talk about adapting your approach, I always think of this lecturer I had many years ago. He always comes to mind. He asked a room full of students, he asked, have you ever heard that expression, if at first you don't succeed? Imagine a room full of students. We've all got our hands up and we're feeling very enthusiastic. We're going, yeah, absolutely, try and try again. And he just sighed and he said, who the hell tries the same thing over and over again? And this is the line he said that's always stuck with me. I share this with so many people. He says, if it didn't work the third time, why do you think it's going to work the 10th? So maybe it's about changing your approach. If what you're doing doesn't work, it's about changing your approach. Okay. It could even mean changing direction. Where we want to get to isn't always a straight line. Sometimes we have to take a step back, or we have to take a step to the side. Sometimes our journey is zigzagged or whatever, but that's okay because we're still moving that little bit closer. Each and every time we do something, we're learning as well. We're learning what works, we're learning what doesn't work. I say we build on what works, but we also have to learn to rule out or change or adapt what doesn't work. If you're doing something like, imagine you're learning a new skill or a new course or something, if there's someone you want to do it with, I think that could be helpful as well, because two people can motivate each other. You could be doing it with a friend, you could be doing it with friends, you could all be going to the same group, the same class or whatever, and getting feedback from each other. Feedback is very good, especially people you trust, not people who just want you to aim for the floor. Look at your feet. Don't ever lift your head. People want the best from you. People want to bring out the best in you. Get their feedback, because it could be good, honest feedback. What you're doing so well, what you're not doing so well, because sometimes we can question ourselves. Again, that inner critic we have sometimes, tells us we're failing, we're struggling, or maybe we should just give up. This is taking longer than I thought. So if you can get feedback from someone, someone who's going to encourage you and someone you're going to encourage as well, so much the better. But if not, then just pay attention to your progress. A lot of the time we focus again on the difficulty. When we focus on the progress, how far we've come, we don't have to have traveled miles. We don't necessarily have to be at the top of Everest just yet, but we could be maybe at base camp, if you know what I mean. We're about to climb it. You pay attention to the progress, no matter how small it is. To other people, even if you're comparing yourself to others unfavorably, maybe it looks as if they just sail through it. Maybe they're there. Well, remember, they might have started years before you. They might have started the year before you, or they, whatever it happens to be. You can be inspired by them, learn from them. What are they doing so well? But don't be comparing yourself unfavorably. You pay attention to your own progress, no matter how slow. Again, when we see progress, that can create that motivation to be able to move that other little bit forward. Celebrate your progress as well. There's nothing wrong with that. Celebrate your progress. Treat yourself. If you have worked very hard to change one thing, to try another thing, if you're doing quite well, again, you don't have to be there, but you are getting better. You are beginning to see improvements. Maybe you see your comfort zone starting to widen. Maybe you see your confidence is beginning to grow. Maybe you're in a new group, a new social network, so you begin to see your self-esteem is beginning to rise. People are bringing out the best in you. They enjoy your company. They like learning from you as much as you like learning from them. Celebrate your progress. It doesn't do any harm to do that. You're rewarding yourself. Now, this, I think, is one of the reasons why a lot of us maybe struggle to stick to New Year's resolutions. And that is sometimes our energy levels, our enthusiasm for something. Sometimes we feel brilliant. This is such a great idea. I'm doing so well. I'm going to go at this warp speed. This is going to be fantastic. Watch out, world. Here I come. We can't maintain that. We don't maintain that. Sometimes we're going to feel more motivated than other times. Sometimes we're going to feel more enthusiastic than other times. When our enthusiasm begins to waver, I think that's when a lot of us maybe start to drop out. We think we're not going to get that enthusiasm back. But recognize sometimes it might be a little more difficult from others. Again, it's not always a straight path to whatever it is we're aiming for. Sometimes, as I say, it might be a step back or a step to the side. There are obstacles come up. Life happens. And we can find ourselves talked out of things very, very easily. So our enthusiasm, our motivation isn't always going to be at the same level. Recognize that. Could be for different reasons. By the way, we could be hungry. We could be tired. We could be bored. We could have maybe a dozen things we have to look at. There could be a lot of different things going on with us. That doesn't mean we have to quit. Sometimes it just means we might need to have a rest. Maybe we just need to reappraise our approach. It could be anything. Doesn't necessarily mean we need to quit. Again, you pay attention, going back to when you set the resolution. Why was it important at that time? You think of where you were and how things were. So there was something you wanted to change, something had to be different, something needed to improve. So you go back and you remind yourself of that. You're also going back to your self-awareness, you're reminding yourself of some of your own bad habits, because bad habits are kind of hard to kick sometimes. Sometimes they just pop in there, the thought, the belief, whatever it is. Go back to challenging it. Where's the evidence? And by the way, not today is not the same as not ever. My notes are all over the shop. I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. So when you think of setting the goals, I'm going to summarize. I'm going to give a few tips, but just to summarize what I was saying earlier, we don't need a new year to have a resolution. We can have a resolution at any time. When we're setting a resolution, it's not just thinking about how we would like things to be or where we would like things to be, what we would like to be different. We're also thinking of some of the reasons that maybe we haven't done it yet, some of the things that hold us back. Unhelpful beliefs, negative people, lack of resources, could be anything. We pay attention to some of those things. Maybe they're the things we have to address. Now, if we have something like an unhelpful belief system, believes I'm not worthy, everything I do feels, what's the point in trying? When we start to let go of things like that, it's like I said earlier, we don't lose anything. It's those other parts of us start to become more galvanized, they become more concentrated, they become stronger. And sometimes that's maybe the motivation we need, just to let go of something that has been holding us back, like an anchor. Okay, so depending on your goal, it could be something small, it could be something huge. Whatever it is, it could be something that could be done in a day. It could be something that you want to change so that you look at yourself in a year's time, things are going to be very different. So you choose what your goal is. If you need to, you start making SMART goals, and that's when you break it down. That series of little goals, whatever it is, it's going to be specific. You name it. It's not just a question of, I want to be more assertive. How do you want to be more assertive? Who do you want to be more assertive with? One particular person or people in general? You make it measurable. So how would you know when you're more assertive? Way to measure things, I think. I mean, if it's something like losing weight, yeah, you can measure the weight. If it's about getting fitter, you can measure that as well, because maybe you could run a bit faster. Other things, maybe you put yourself on a scale. If it's confidence, well, 0, you have no confidence whatsoever. 10, you could take on the empire, whatever. You put yourself on that scale and you measure, and you notice it's going to fluctuate in different situations. You're going to be feeling more confident in some areas, less confident in others, and that's perfectly okay, because we don't know everything. But you might notice an area where we do struggle with confidence. You might notice that starts to improve. The more you try something, the more familiar you become with something. So that's a good way of measuring something like confidence, using a scale. You can do that with anxiety, you can do that with self-esteem, you can do that a lot of different things, but recognize it's not always going to be the top score, the best score. It's going to fluctuate in different situations. Where did I get to with the SMART goals? Measurable. Yeah, achievable. Make sure it's achievable. I'm 5'6". If I want the goal of being 6'3", that ain't going to happen. Unless I buy myself a pair of longer legs, that's not going to happen. Whatever it is, you make it achievable, not something impossible. You make it realistic as well. Again, I'm never going to be 6'3". And time bound as well. You give yourself a time scale. That could be, again, if you want to enroll in a course. Let's imagine it is the new year. Well, courses maybe don't start until September. So that's going to be your goal. So what do you do between now and then? You could be finding out which course you want to do, where you want to do it, how much it's going to cost. You can get all the information you need. You could also still be learning about that topic between now and then. There's lots of stuff on the internet you could read about. There's other people who have maybe done it that you could learn from them. If it's about getting fitter, losing weight, it's the same thing. When? At what point do you want to be at your ideal fitness or whatever? You make it time bound. If it's about getting a new job, when do you want the new job? If you get one tomorrow morning, so much the better. That's probably not going to happen. It could be you have to update your CV, you have to learn new skills, you have to start applying for things. You give yourself a time scale, okay? So they're your SMART goals. You track your progress as well, as I say. How closer are you to your goal? What is it you're noticing that's changing? And here's a useful thing to think about as well. You think about how you might like to change. When things start to change, you pay attention as well to the people around you. What do they notice that's different? Some people might notice something different. They might be curious. They might ask you questions. They might compliment you. Some people might not like it. They don't want to see a change. They preferred you the way they are, the way you were. They might not say anything. Sometimes you can still pick up on someone's demeanor. You can pick up on their behavior that maybe they're picking up on something different. When people do pick up on something different, I think there's something quite self-validating about that, because maybe you are doing something right. Now, you can also pick up if you're doing something wrong, so you can adapt it. But you think about what other people might be noticing. What are they saying to you? Are they treating you any differently? Pay attention to those little things when you think about your progress. If you are doing something with someone else or with a group of people, it's a good way to be accountable, because sometimes we slip, we want to go back, we just, we like water, we'll try and flow the easiest route. We'll start talking ourselves out of things as soon as we start to lack motivation and so on. If you're doing something as part of a group, it's good to have that accountability. Did you get your homework done this week? Have you done this week? Or I've been struggling with this. Could you help me with that? It's good to be able to support and help each other. It's okay, as I say, as well, to reward yourself when you find yourself moving closer towards where you would like to be. If you have an ultimate reward for whenever you do achieve whatever it is, not necessarily a bad thing. You might treat yourself to a nice holiday or something, start saving money. It could be, it could be anything. If it's me, it's a bit of cake or something. You treat yourself to something. It's good to be able to reward yourself. Staying focused as well. You stay focused on why you're trying to make the change. And like I said earlier on, you pay attention to the benefits of the change, but you also pay attention to what happens if you don't. Could be maybe getting another job, but you find that this time next year, you haven't done anything. You haven't updated your CV. You haven't applied for anything. You haven't looked at learning new skills or whatever. Well, a year from now, you're still in the same place. You're just as unhappy. Maybe you're still badly paid, or you're badly treated or whatever. And, chances are you're even more miserable, because not only are you thinking about being stuck, you're also thinking about the opportunity, the year that you've missed, the year that you've wasted. So pay attention to the consequences and as well as the benefits of what you do, as well as what you don't do. It's okay to review things once in a while. Are things going the way you would like them to be? Now, this is the thing about change. We have a change, fair enough. Sometimes when we are changing, we're moving towards something, it's perfectly okay to change your mind and change direction. Not necessarily anything wrong with that. Give yourself permission to change your mind if you need to. Just because you commit to doing something doesn't mean you have to do that for the rest of your life. You might find it's not for you, but you did get something from it. You've learned that you do have stamina. You do have more confidence than you thought. You can take that and you can apply that to something else. You can move in another direction, or maybe you do complete whatever it is you wanted to do. But maybe that's whetted your appetite, so you want to do a bit more. You want to learn a bit more. Again, not necessarily a bad thing. So review and adjust every now and again. Sometimes the things we do are little coping strategies, the things we do to help manage, they might need adjusted. They might not work in every single case. That's perfectly okay. You adjust them or you try something else. It's whatever keeps you moving forward. Lastly, you be consistent. Again, one of the reasons why a lot of us fail with our resolutions, why we struggle with them sometimes, is the inconsistency. I will do this on a Saturday. Well, okay, maybe you can only do it on a Saturday, but sometimes you might find you miss that Saturday. The next Saturday becomes a little easier to miss as well. And we get into these bad habits, as I say. So you be consistent. If you agree to do something for an hour a day and you only, I'm just thinking here, if you only do half an hour, well, maybe the next day that means having to do an hour and a half. whatever it is. I suppose it depends on what it is, but again, you're being consistent, you're building your self-discipline and so on. I'm going to leave you with a little exercise as well. When you're thinking of your resolution, whatever it is, remember, it's not just a notion that you would like to try. It could well be, by the way, but if it's something that's really important to you, something you want to try, something you want to do better, but you are also aware that there are obstacles. Again, it could be money, it could be time, it could be resources, it could be a lot of different things. It could be lack of support. There could be a lot of different reasons why we struggle. There could be a lot of obstacles in the path. So you still think about what it is you would like to do. And again, just like earlier with the scale, you put yourself on a scale. How motivated are you? How important is this? 0, you could care less. Not a big deal. It's just flash in the pan, whatever it happens to be. Yeah, whatever. 10, you're going to go out at warp speed. There's no holding me back. So you put yourself on that scale, and it doesn't matter where you are. You could even be a 2, or you could be a 9. It doesn't matter. You could be anywhere on that scale. If it were just 1 point higher, what would you do different? Just that 1 point. What would you do different? You think of the obstacles. Okay. Again, a little bit of creative thinking. If that obstacle wasn't there, what would you be doing that's different? If that obstacle wasn't a problem, I can't do it because of whatever. Well, if that wasn't there, what would you be doing? What you're doing is you're tapping into your creative side, your problem-solving side. It's not that the problem isn't important. Of course it's important. But if that wasn't there, what would you be doing? So you get an idea of that. Well, could you do that? Could you do that to navigate around whatever it is, or through whatever it is? Whatever that problem is that something you could get help and support for? Is there someone out there who could advise you or guide you or whatever? So you put yourself on that scale, as I say, for your motivation. If it were just 1 point, just 1 point higher, what would you do? What would be different? And whatever the problem is, if it wasn't there, what would you do? Good ways to build your motivation. So, I'm nearly out of breath saying all that. I hope you found something helpful in that. That is really looking at New Year's resolutions, but they're really things you could apply to anything. You don't need a New Year to have a resolution. It could be for anything. It could be for that new job. It could be for looking for a new friendship group. It could be enrolling in a course, learning a new skill. It could be trying to get fitter. It could be trying to be more confident, more outgoing, whatever it is. You look at whatever it is. Some of those things I talked through, they might sound quite simple. They're not really. They might take a little bit of work, but sometimes you find the work is worth it. I'm going to have a look at some questions. Where am I? You probably noticed I'm all over the place tonight. So my room's looking slightly different. You see, this is a little bit higher as well. That's because Santa brought me a new microphone. So where are we? Another year gone, thank God. Well, Steve, if last year was a difficult year for you, pay attention to why it was difficult. What would make 2024 better? Again, you apply some of those things. What would you like to be different? And how could you go about making it different? How could you make 2024 a better year? It doesn't have to be a perfect year. It doesn't have to be amazing. Not everything has to go your way, but what could you do to try to improve on last year? Okay. Oh, Barbie, you're saying you're late. That's perfectly okay. I'm always late. Don't worry about it. Learn how to procrastinate the less I can. That little exercise about the procrastination. Just draw a line down the page. Left-hand side, all of the problems, all of the difficulties. Then just go ahead and do it. But then write down what were the real problems? What were the real issues? You keep repeating that. And again, you're tapping into your, if you will, your critical thinking, your problem solving. A lot of the times we're talking ourselves out of things. Remember the difference between procrastination and avoidance. Avoidance is, it's not my best interest. I really don't want this. It's going to be painful. Procrastination is, it is in my best interest. I just don't want it with the hassle. I don't want it with the effort. I don't want it with the sacrifice. I don't want it with the fear of failing, whatever that happens to be. So again, that exercise can be useful. And as I often say, it is your own handwritten evidence, by the way. Acceptance to reality, adaptation to that. I'm not quite sure what that means. Acceptance to reality, adaptation to death. Well, the acceptance to reality bit I get. So I often say acceptance is it's a very curious thing. When we accept something, it doesn't mean we're okay with it. It doesn't mean we approve of it. It doesn't mean we're fine with it. It just means we're acknowledging it is what it is. But when we accept it, we're now free to change something. Procrastinating on physical fitness has been a huge challenge for me. Actually, me too. But again, we pay attention to why we're procrastinating. It's not that we don't want it, it's just that we don't want it now, or we want it without the hassle. Sometimes we magnify the hassle. Okay. We're alive, we can do anything. That's good. Monique is watching from Indiana. Hello from Indiana. Let me see. Hi, Darren. Everyone frozen, just my connection. Difficulty saying no in stressful situations took a toll on my heart. No isn't a bad word. We can be led to believe no is a bad word, but it's not. Sometimes it's actually a full sentence. We can struggle with the word no for a lot of different reasons. I think we struggle with no. We don't like to hurt people. We don't like to offend them. We don't like to disappoint them. We fear being rejected. We fear things getting worse. There could be a lot of different reasons why we don't like saying no, but when we learn how to say no, and when people learn to respect our no, I believe they tend to appreciate our yes a lot more. They value our yes a lot more. It's something, it's like anything else, it's maybe practicing it. Practicing it in little, small, easy ways, even practicing it with strangers in shops and cafes, whatever it is, or with friends that you feel comfortable enough with. You just take that little risk, little, small, measured risk. Say no, it's like anything else. When we expose ourselves to the things that we feel uncomfortable with, in small, measured little doses, little tiny steps at a time, what happens is our confidence starts to grow. Our comfort zone starts to widen. We start to become a little bit more courageous, but it takes a little bit of time, a little bit of patience. But we can get there in the end. Again, as I said earlier on about being consistent. Okay. So, where are there any other questions? Setting boundaries is hard, but every relationship gets better. Boundaries, just like the word no, they can be difficult, but again, this is the thing about saying no, boundaries, things like that. We can be flexible, and it's perfectly okay to change your mind. Sometimes we'll say yes, we can think about no, actually, that doesn't suit. Or we could say no, it's the opposite way. Actually, I've thought about that, and maybe, yeah, I do have the time, so it's a yes. Boundaries are the same. Our boundaries can be flexible. They don't always have to be rigid. And I think sometimes that's the difficulty in recognizing that they can be flexible. Our boundaries are going to be different in different situations. And you said they become better in different relationships. Yeah, if you will, over time, we start to recognize what's acceptable and what isn't, what we can put up with and what we won't, what we could be easygoing with and what is definitely a red line. Takes that little bit of time. And it's not just our say our romantic relationships. We find out in our friendships, people we work with, even our next door neighbor. We learn these things as we go. Look at my list. Ignore the past and future. Focus on present time. Works well. Yeah, sometimes we need to focus on the here and now in order to get done what we're doing. I think we can allow the past to inform us. Doesn't necessarily have to dictate the present, or the future can inform us. Nothing else. Again, we learn from the past. When it comes to the future, sometimes we have to think of the future in order to be able to set our goals. What's going to be different in the future? When we're setting a resolution, we're thinking about, again, our future self. That might mean having to sacrifice or change or struggle with something in the here and now in order to have a better future. One of the things that I sometimes say in therapy to clients is, when you're thinking of your resolutions, your goals, and things like that, you think in terms of, what can you do today? What could you begin today, or even first thing in the morning, that you might thank yourself for later on? So, yeah, we focus on the present whenever we're focusing on what's right in front of us, what's important, what we need to do. We don't get lost in the past or caught up in the future. But those two things are still important. As I say, the past informs us. The future can, if you will, that's what we're aiming for. So, a bit of balance, I guess, is what I'm saying. I have a really long-winded way of saying things, don't I? Yeah, you're right. You don't need a resolution once. You can have as many resolutions as you want. But you pick them and you find ways to stick to them. You figure out what they are, why they're important. Make sure it's realistic. Yeah. Don't like rituals. I'm not sure what the context of that is. Hello, Noel. Finished session. Want to wish everyone a happy new year. Happy new year to you too, Noel. And thanks for coming along tonight. It's nice to see you. Okay. Consistency, compliance. Yeah. Thanks for Darren. Forgiving ourselves for missing a time or two, so long as we get back and don't give up. Yeah, we need to have a little bit of self-compassion. This is the thing about self-compassion. We can be compassionate, we can be gentle, but we can be stern at the same time. We can do that with ourselves. We can be compassionate because something was difficult, we messed up, we maybe had a lazy fit, or maybe we did something wrong, it blew up in our face. We tried something, it didn't work. So we can be compassionate. If you think of the alternative, it's like beating yourself with a rod. You're judging yourself very harshly. You have enough compassion, but you can still be stern at the same time. You have to learn from it. Just like you would with a friend. Someone comes to you with a problem, to tell you something they've done, something that hasn't worked for them. Yeah, you can have sympathy for them. You can have compassion for them. You can also encourage them. Sometimes we need to talk to ourselves like that. Six, that is so funny. You're going to put your left foot in the air so you can start the new year on the right foot. That is quite funny. Where am I going? Oh, every time someone messages, I keep losing myself. Wall looks great with the additional pictures. No, thank you very much. Yes, Santa brought me 2 new pictures. They're both from the War of the Worlds. I don't know if you can see the top one. It's a cover of the War of the Worlds book, and the bottom one is one of the Martian tripods, a fighting machine. So yeah, I'm delighted with that. Yeah, so it's the sci-fi nerd in me. Where we get to. Thank you so much again. Your working time, wisdom, and all you've shared. Mike, I'm glad you find it helpful. That's the important thing. And I do appreciate joining me tonight. When I do the live streams, I waffle on for about an hour and then I answer questions. I know it can be hard to take in, but even if somebody just gets one thing that they find helpful, that's brilliant. I'm glad you find it helpful. Hello, dashingly handsome man. There's someone else in here. Oh, you meant me. Oh, thank you. It's been about 30 years from anyone called me handsome. Perfection is not necessary or even desirable. Keeps me moving. Perfection doesn't exist. I think it's a fallacy. It's not real. What's perfect to one person, not necessarily going to be perfect to another. But there was procrastination on YouTube a lot of times. I procrastinate quite a lot on YouTube, and I really shouldn't, because I'm supposed to be a channel person. What does he call it? A YouTuber, whatever it is. But
Spock says, one man cannot summon the future, and Kirk says, one man can change the present. That's quite wise. So that's why I like quotes from old books and movies and TV shows and things. Something very wise written. One man cannot summon the future, but one man can change the present. Changing the present can shape the future, I think, or influence the future. Problem in society is thinking all confrontation is bad. Confrontation is healthy and healing if it can be addressed in a loving way. Yeah, a lot of people struggle with confrontation. Confrontation, it's a bad thing. It means, some kind of conflict, and not at all. It can turn into that, but a confrontation, I think, when handled correctly, and you look at two people debating something on television and or YouTube or whatever, when it's a good debate, you have two opposing views, but what they're doing is they're listening to each other, but they're confronting each other and things they've just said, and they're doing it in a way that's quite good mannered and so on. It's quite constructive. A confrontation can open up a whole line of understanding that wasn't there previously. I think when it becomes adversarial, whenever there is conflict there, it's just getting out of hand. It's just people accusing each other of things that probably never happened. Confrontation opens up a whole line of understanding. It can also open up a line of communication that wasn't there previously. Two people now begin to understand each other a little bit better, and they can communicate a little bit better. And that means problems, difficulties can be resolved a little bit better. So you're right. Confrontation is not necessarily a bad thing. Or are we? Gina says, I love these live sessions when I manage to attend. I sit comfortably and still like participating in a show. Well, actually you are, because I'm addressing your questions as best I can. So maybe you are participating. Wouldn't be much fun if I was doing this myself. It's the thing. I started doing the live streams. My first one, I think, was last January. It's only this year I've been doing them. I didn't think I would like them. I didn't think I would be any good at them. I don't think quickly on my feet, if you know what I mean. That being said, when I do the videos, if you ever notice the videos I put out, I don't, presenting something doesn't come naturally to me. I'm not what you call a good presenter. I recognize it. I've got some feedback. I do lack charisma. I do know that. But what I found in the live streams is I have a few bullet points, I have a few notes, but other than that, I just say what comes into my head. It tends to flow a lot naturally, and it tends to come a lot easier. And I do enjoy the live streams much more than I do the videos. So it's funny how that works. Do you know what? There's an example of coming out of your comfort zone. Starting YouTube in the first place was to kick me out of my comfort zone. And I didn't expect to get really anywhere with it. It's nice that I did, but I wasn't really expecting it. When it started to get a bit of momentum, and a few people were asking, what are we doing live streams and talk about stuff? Yeah, okay. After a while, I decided I would do it, and now I have been doing it. And I must find, I do admit, I prefer this than I do putting out the videos. This is much more fun because I have no idea what people are going to ask. I have no idea what people are going to say, and I do like the engagement. I'll be honest, I would prefer this if you were all sitting in front of me, because at the moment, all I can see is me looking back at me and a list of comments. Be nicer if you were all in the room. I would find that a lot easier. But this is a lot easier, and I do prefer this. So I'm glad you enjoy that. Okay, because I'm enjoying it too. Hello, Observing UK. Why confrontation and not exchanging experiences? Well, that's actually quite a good question. The confrontation is exchanging experiences. It's a good way of putting it, but sometimes the confrontation, if you look at it this way, this is how I would imagine it. The two people might not necessarily understand each other's opinions in the first place. They might not understand each other's positions in the first place. So exchanging experiences, both people are maybe open to it. They're maybe asking each other. Sometimes, not always, it's going to go like that, because somebody might be doing something or saying something that the other person's finding difficult. They're finding a problem with it or whatever. And if they just launch in, this confrontation, this fight or whatever, they start accusing the other person and, calling them names, telling them they're a bad person or whatever. And that tends to shut things down, and it just becomes a fight. That's when it becomes adversarial. The difference with the exchanging experiences, that person could be doing something that's maybe hurtful or offensive, but they don't know. The person confronts them, but they confront them with their behavior, not who or what they are as a person. They're not judging them, not telling them they're horrible people. They're pointing out what you're doing and what you're saying is not that helpful, it's hurtful, or there is an easier way of doing it, or there is a better way of doing it, or why could you not just come to me in the first place and mention whatever? So that is still a confrontation. But it has, as I said earlier, it's opened up a line of understanding that wasn't there previously, because the other person is now aware of that. It's opened up that line of communication as well, because again, previous to that, there might not have been any communication. So saying and exchanging experiences, yeah, people can do that. So they are sharing their experiences and exchanging ideas and so on. But sometimes the confrontation is when there is a little bit of challenge. But that challenge, as I say, does not have to be aggressive. Okay. Practice the advice you'd give to your friend. Yeah. How to get something out of the ground, though? I've avoiding tendencies. Starting projects is scary. Then you start from where you feel comfortable. You start from what might be easiest. If what you're doing, what you might want to try, what you might want to change is maybe overwhelming, it brings up an anxiety, pardon me, then you start with what's easier, and you start in a very small way, maybe a very small, quiet, private way. No one really has to notice, only you. And you pay attention. As I say, you pay attention to your progress, you pay attention as you go along. And that's what you start to build on. And each little time you do that, you might find yourself getting just that little bit more confident as you go along. Trying to get off the ground. Remember what I was saying earlier about how we can often talk ourselves out of things? Because again, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a problem. Well, I can't tell you that it won't be, because it might be, but put into context what those real problems are. Sometimes it might be something like, well, I don't like how it would feel. Now, I'm not saying that's not important, because of course it is. But this is the thing about our feelings. Our feelings are very important, and they're worth paying attention to. But if we don't regulate them, sometimes they are making the decisions for us. So you pay attention to what it is about the feeling you don't like. It could be uncertainty. It could be the fear of failure. It could be the fear of criticism. It could be any number of things. When you pay attention to what the actual fear is, it might be a little bit easier to address. But I often say, not necessarily on your own, with maybe the right kind of help, the right kind of support, maybe counseling support, having a good support network around you. Think about what I was saying earlier as well about exposing yourself to things you're uncomfortable with. You face the things you're uncomfortable with, but you do it in very safe, measured ways, and you do it voluntarily. You do it of your own accord. Okay. You don't get pushed into it. You don't get, blackmailed into it. You don't get threatened into it. You do it of your own accord. It's your own volition. Whenever you're doing that, again, you see your confidence start to grow. What I would also say is, depending on what it is, it could be very important. Let's imagine it is a job. You do want a new job. You pay attention to what might happen if you don't. Again, a year from now, you're stuck in the same place. Not only are you just as miserable, maybe a little bit more miserable, but you're now more regretful that you didn't take the chance, or you didn't start that little bit sooner. So you pay attention to the pros and the cons on both sides, if you do, as well as if you don't. Okay. Video on setting boundaries. I'm not sure I have one. That's something I would have to come back with. I'm not really sure. TARDIS. Yep. It's in the background. I have one in the cabinet. I have one on the wall. Starting to care less about what other people think about you is liberating. Yeah. I have this friend. I used to think he was very clever and very witty. He would come up with these amazing little nuggets of wisdom. So you can imagine my disappointment when I found out it wasn't him at all that said these things. It was people like Oscar Wilde. One of the things he used to say was, what other people think of me is none of my business. And there is some truth in that. But I would like to add to it. Just because it's none of your business doesn't mean it doesn't matter. We're social creatures. Yeah, we all like to be liked. We all like to be well thought of. It doesn't sit well when people reject us. So yeah, it is important what people think of us, but the question is, why do we give it so much power? Because a lot of the times it's almost like we're at somebody else's mood. We're at the mercy of someone else's mood. Sometimes they're going to like us and sometimes they're not. So the question is, why do we give it so much power? You're right. Caring a bit less. It's not that we don't care, but we care a little less. Okay. Ruth says, Darren, I have software that allows me to take call-ins if you're feeling brave in 2024. Ruth, I've never been brave in my life. Absolutely. Absolutely not. First sign of danger, I hide under a pile of coats. Hope it goes away. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm not making any promises, but here's what I'll do. I'm going to watch you take live calls, and when I see how you handle it, then maybe I'll do it. Okay. But yeah, I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to say no. I think actually that would be a lot of fun, but I would like to see you do it first. I'm going to say to you as well, Ruth, while you're here, because I was going to message you. I was on your channel previously, and yeah, I'll go on it again. We'll take the calls maybe. Be interested if you want to come onto my channel again. One of the things you practice schema therapy. I would be really interested, and I know a little bit about schema therapy. I've just kind of tapped into it and I've looked at it, but I would be really interested to discuss schema therapy with you if you'd be interested in doing that in a joint collaboration, and of course, whatever else comes up. So yeah, you can let me know. Hold myself accountable. Yeah, we need to hold ourselves accountable. So every time I go to look, these jump all over the place. It's difficult to face what scares us. We know what's good. Take courage for only the good stuff. It is difficult to face the things that scare us. There are things that sometimes really terrify us, and there are things that terrify us for good reason. But there are also things that scare us and they're holding us back. I'm not saying we shouldn't be scared of them. We shouldn't be afraid of them. We shouldn't be scared. I'm not saying that. It's the proportion to which we fear them. When we just said earlier on about exposing ourselves to the things we're uncomfortable with, what happens is the fear, the anxiety, the stress it brings up, I'm not going to lie to you, it doesn't go away. Okay, it stays. But what happens is it starts to dilute. It doesn't have the grip that it once had. It again, it informs us, but it doesn't necessarily dictate our next course of action. We can learn to regulate it, because we will say we're afraid. We'll say we're anxious. Well, we could well be, and maybe for good reason, but what is it we're actually afraid of? Well, we could be afraid, we could be anxious because we feel uncertain. We don't know what the outcome is. We don't know what other people, their reaction is going to be. We could fear failing. We could feel as if we have a lack of control. If we come out of that comfort zone, we could fear we have a lack of control over things that are really important to us. When we are aware of that, again, we can start to draw on our other strengths, our other resources. We can start to regulate things. Well, if I feel uncertain, well, what's the outcome I would prefer? How much information do I have? What information is lacking? Is there a way of finding that information? I feel a lack of control. What control do I have? We cannot control other people, but we can control ourselves. We can control our responses. We can control our actions. So we look at what our strengths are, the things that we can do, the things that we can control. Okay. Again, the fear, the anxiety doesn't necessarily go away, but it dilutes. It's there, if you will, to inform us. That's all. Okay. People thinking something. Where are we? Oh, see, every time I go to read something, it moves down. Be kinder. See 29 folks watching, only 18 likes. Glad you appreciate the little reminder. Happy 2024. Yeah. Be kinder. Happy 2024 to you as well. 5 people watching me, I'd be happy, as long as someone's listening, as long as somebody's getting something out of it. I also know that this uploads and people watch it at a later date, so that's fine. But as well, it's the holiday season and it's a Friday night. Who wants to be in listening to a grey-haired old fool like me? Where do we get to? Okay. Fear of failing. Failing's not a nice thing, but failing doesn't make you a failure any more than going to a garage makes you a car. Sometimes we have to fail in order to be able to succeed. We have to figure out what doesn't work before we find out what does. Someone tells you how to live your life, it's healthier to walk away. Yeah. There's a difference between advice and guidance and little tips and tricks and things like that, and someone trying to dictate how you live your life. I think that's the difference. Happy everything, Darren. Thanks a lot. To you too, Barbara. Okay. It's cathartic, like listening to sad music when you're sad, hearing someone else explain something you're going through. It's like a friend that actually listens. There is something incredibly powerful in being listened to. Absolutely. I think not being heard, not being listened to can be one of the most devaluing things ever. Now, even when someone listens to us, it doesn't necessarily mean they're agreeing with us. It doesn't mean they're colluding with us or collaborating with us. It doesn't mean they're validating everything that we say or we think we feel, but just being heard. There is such power in that. Very, very wise, clever man, Carl Rogers, came up with a whole person-centered approach, humanistic approach to counseling and so on. Believed in the power of listening, just listening to someone, not necessarily judging them, not telling them they're right or wrong, but hearing how things are for them, where they are, what they would like to be better. There is something powerful in listening. And this is something I often say when I work with couples and maybe there's arguments or something. Listen to the other person, because they might have seen something you haven't seen. They might have a bit of wisdom or experience that you don't have. They might have information you don't have. Listen to them. It doesn't have to be a couple. This could be anything. It could be in work. It could be, again, next door neighbors, anything. When we listen, we just might pick up something we didn't have before. Might become just that little bit more informed. When we also listen to that other person, chances are they're going to calm down a bit. They're not screaming at us to get their point across. They don't feel as if they're shouting at a brick wall. They're being heard. They might start to calm down a bit. They might settle down a bit, and then your discussion can begin. So yeah, being heard, being listened to. Never underestimate the value of just listening to someone. Absolutely. Make my resolutions all year long, each day. It may be really true that the core of our feelings is sense of safety. If you're familiar with polyvagal theory, sense of safety. Yeah, I think we're hardwired for safety to avoid danger, so on. Sometimes the danger is not in proportion. Again, if we're not regulating how we feel, if our belief system is, dysregulated, we're deeply ingrained beliefs and so on. If we're not challenging those beliefs, For instance, someone who believes the world is a dangerous place will see everything as a potential threat, a potential risk. When we challenge those beliefs, when we explore them, where they came from, the evidence for, the evidence against, we maybe start to see things in a balanced way. The world can be a dangerous place, but it can also be an incredibly beautiful place. It can be a very safe place. It can be the safest place we could be. It's balance. It has the capacity for both. I got sidetracked there, sorry. Yeah, we have 2 ears to listen, one mouth to talk. Yep, you're right, Laura. That's why we have 2 ears. Yeah, we listen more than we talk. Except me, I'm the only one talking tonight. No point in bringing Freud up. He can't talk. He's a dog. So, coming towards the end, barely get a word out. My experience is almost immediately invalidated. People isolate you sometimes without meaning to, just out of habit. Yeah. Again, that's what I said about the confrontation. It doesn't always have to be aggressive. If we're not feeling heard, if we're not feeling listened to, when we point that out, I don't feel as if I was heard, I don't feel as if I was understood, or I don't feel I'm being listened to, whatever it is, you're not necessarily accusing anybody of anything. You're not screaming at them, you're not listening to me. What the other person does with the information, by the way, is entirely up to them, because maybe they don't want to listen. Maybe we're saying things they don't want to know. It could be anything going on. Once we at least get the information out, we've said it, we've communicated it. Now, maybe it falls flat, nothing changes, but at least we have said. Someone says they don't understand. Someone says, they talk over the top of us, whatever it is. Maybe there's more going on with them than is going on with you. Okay? This might be more about them. Doesn't necessarily make it easier, and it's not about proportion and blame or anything, but it can make more sense of the situation. Pay attention to other situations when people do listen to you, because there's bound to be people that do hear you. People do listen to you. Even if you go into a shop, you go to buy something, the shop assistant is listening to you. Pay attention to the times when people do listen to you. Tired, going to bed. Good night, Mohammed. I'm actually going to bed too soon. So, good night, and thanks for joining me. Listen to someone who's acknowledging the person. Yeah, you're right, Gina. You're acknowledging the person. You're hearing them. Yeah, absolutely. So, I've come to an end this evening, because it's now 9:45 here. I'm a little later than I normally am. I hope you found something helpful in this. As I say, this is about New Year's resolutions. You can apply this to any kind of goal that you want to work on. Something you want to change, you need to change, whatever that happens to be. It could be, career-wise, it could be relationship-wise, it could be professionally, it could be just in your day-to-day living, it could be your health, whatever it is. What is it you want to change? Why is it important to change? What's holding you back from changing? Pay attention to those bad habits. What can you do to address those bad habits? What new habits could you form? You pay attention to your strengths, but also areas in which you struggle. Some people call them weaknesses. If you want to call them weaknesses, you pay attention to your strengths, you pay attention to your weaknesses. What can you take from one area that compensates for another? You build on your awareness. You build on your cues, your triggers, the things that trigger some of those bad habits that might prevent you. You be adaptive, you be creative, you be self-compassionate, but a little bit stern as well when you need to be. You focus on the outcome, you focus on the future, what you want to get from this, why this is important. You recognize your motivation, your energy is not always going to be consistent. There are going to be times when you're tired. There's going to be other times when you're just, there's no holding you back. Pay attention to what's different in those times. Again, you could be tired, you could be hungry, you could be bored, you could have a lot of things going on at once, so you don't have the capacity. So you pay attention to all of those things. You try to stay focused, again, on the outcome, on the goal, and what you might need to do in order to get to that outcome. You put yourself on that scale, as I say. How committed are you to this? 0, you can't be bothered. 10, you're sort of, warp speed. Wherever you find yourself on that scale, what would it be? What would be different if it was just 1 point higher? Just 1 point. Not what do you need? Just get up and do it. No, just 1 point higher. What would be different? What would you be doing that's different? So I'm going to leave you all with a little bit of homework. Okay. Until the next time, which will be in the new year at some point, date to be arranged, because I usually do it every 10 days, but we're starting the new year. It's like a reset, starts on a Monday. So let's see where we go from there. Everybody, your homework between now and then is you're all to have a very happy 2024. Okay. See how you get on. Let me know. So until now and the next time, take care, everybody. And thanks for joining me. Bye now.